But my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com, my daily take, is titled, "Trump is Unraveling. Isn't it time to act before he destroys the world?" And, you know, basically, I don't know if you caught this thing last night, but there's nothing new, right? We were expecting him to say, okay, we're going to declare victory and pull out. No, he didn't say we're going to pull out. The other fear was that he would say, okay, we're going to go in with ground troops. So he didn't say that either. He did kind of at the very end said, it's going to be another 2 or 3 weeks and we're going to bomb the crap out of them, or words to that effect. He threatened to bomb them back to the Stone Age, which is a war crime. I mean, it was wild. The price of oil, the oil futures and the stock futures, oil futures went up, stock futures went down during his speech. It was like the whole world was watching this thing. The Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, he says, this was on X, he says, the threat of NATO's breakup, easing sanctions on Russia, massive energy crisis in Europe, halting aid for Ukraine, and blocking a loan for Kyiv by Orban. It all looks like Putin's dream plan. Yeah. And then, you know, also last night he said, and I quote, "We built the strongest economy in history, no inflation, record-setting investments." Yeah. Don't believe your lying eyes, right? I mean, all over America, people had to be watching that going, huh? He tried to blame a bunch of crap on Biden, of course. I'm surprised he didn't get a Barack Hussein Obama in there at least once. He said the United States is totally independent of the Middle East. No, not really, and we'll get into that in some more detail today. He said the president of Iran has asked the United States for a ceasefire. No evidence of that. He blamed the USS Cole bombing on Iran. USS Cole, this was years ago, and it was done by Al-Qaeda. That was Al-Qaeda is Sunni. Iran is Shia. That's like blaming Protestants for something the Pope did, you know? I mean, it's like, come on. And then his magical thinking moment. He said, when this conflict is over, the strait will open up naturally. You know, it was March, I believe March 20th of 2020 when, you know, we kind of officially went into COVID reality, not lockdown and everything else. And it was just a month later in April, he was saying, it'll just magically disappear. I mean, here we are. It was a low-energy speech. He had nothing to offer. The guy is lost. He kept going off on these little tangents about, like, nobody's ever seen and nobody could have believed. These superlative phrases that he's probably used his whole entire life to sell real estate. Oh, nobody's ever seen an apartment this nice. You're going to have the nicest apartment. You know, it's... Jeff Tiedrich calls him President Sundowner Befuddle Pants. Sundowning is an actual thing. It's when people are in early stage dementia, and by the end of the day, they've just kind of exhausted their mental energy capacity, and they start getting less and less coherent. And I think that's what we were seeing last night. You know, we're also getting reports today that he's going to fire Pam Bondi. And yesterday he was picking on poor, what's her name? Is Carolyn Leavitt, his press secretary. He turns to her and he says, I'm getting between 93 and 97% negative media coverage. And then he turns to Carolyn and he says, maybe Carolyn is doing a poor job. I don't know. And then he turns to her and he says, you're doing a terrible job. And then he turns to the reporters and says, shall we keep her? I think we'll keep her. I mean, can you imagine? Pam Bondi's being humiliated. Carolyn Leavitt's being humiliated. He got rid of Christy. No, he's getting rid of the women, is what it looks like to me. Donald Trump can't take responsibility for anything. He hasn't his whole entire life. When his casino was failing, his father walked in with $1 million in cash and bought a bunch of chips and then just left them there. It was a way of, illegally putting $1 million into Donald's business. I mean, it's just, this guy has never done anything successful in his life other than run a grift. He burned through all the money he inherited from his father. He was completely bankrupt in the 90s. I mean, totally bankrupt if it wasn't for all that Russian money, which is probably why he's doing whatever Putin wants. Laura Ingraham has noticed this, right? It's not just me. I mean, Laura Ingraham and Alex Jones in the last 2 days have come out and said, this is what Laura Ingraham said. She was talking about, she says, was the president fully briefed about the risks of all this in the beginning? And was he, and now catch this is Laura Ingraham. And was he then able to take it all in and understand the complexity of this? Grandpa Sundowner Befuddle Pants? I mean, Joe Rogan is questioning this guy. Mary Trump, the clinical psychologist and niece of Donald, some time ago wrote about his decompensating mental state. She said, this isn't a joke. This isn't one more thing we can sweep under the rug. This issue, which is infinitely more important and serious than the effing emails, needs to be on the front page of every newspaper. I mean, you know, he wiped out his own inherited wealth, but that was just his own inherited wealth. Now he's wiping out the wealth of the entire country. Now he's coming out and saying, you know, we can't have Medicare any longer, or Medicaid, or daycare. These aren't things the federal government should do. I mean, this is well, I want to get to that in more detail in just a minute, but, you know, nuclear armed powers are watching. President Xi in China is not senile, and he's watching what's going on and thinking, huh, look at that. We just moved another aircraft carrier, you know, attack group out of the Taiwan region over toward the Middle East. And Trump said 2 or 3 more weeks, which is making everybody think that he's going to launch a ground attack as a kind of Hail Mary whatever. He appears increasingly drunk on power. He's surrounded himself with toadies who are totally terrified of him. Nobody will tell him the bad news. His contradictions are sharper. And pretty much everybody can see this. So what can we do? I'm not sure that we can wait until November. There are 2 constitutional remedies. One is impeachment, and the other is the 25th Amendment. Impeachment could be done right now. It would require a small handful of Republicans in the House and a small handful of Republicans in the Senate to go along with all of the Democrats. I don't think there's a single Democrat who would not vote for impeachment other than maybe John Fetterman. So if you're represented by a Republican, you know, if you're in one of those red states where you've got a Republican senator, or if you happen to be even in a blue state but you have a Republican member of the House, 202-224-3121 is the phone number for the switchboard, the congressional switchboard. And if you're not sure who represents you in the House, just give me your zip code and they'll tell you who represents you. And put a call through to the Republicans and say, you know, it's time to seriously consider impeachment. This guy, you know, he's talking about bombing Iran back to the Stone Age. This is World War I kind of stuff. Yeah. You know, I mean, Iran has mutual military and intelligence security agreements and arrangements, treaties, whatever they are, with China and Russia. I mean, we're at war with an ally of these 2 other countries that could do us serious harm. And then the other alternative, of course, is the 25th Amendment, which would have to be initiated by J.D. Vance and would have to be, you know, a majority of his cabinet. Now, we don't quite have the ability to generate the kind of political pressure on them with a phone call. But I'm thinking that there have to be Republicans out there who are looking at this going, we got to get rid of this guy. He's ruining our future. What do you think?